The summer air was warm and heavy with the scent of pine trees as 8-year-old Noah Campbell ran through the forest, his laughter echoing among the tall trees. It was the annual Campbell family reunion at his grandparents' sprawling property in Montana, and Noah was in the middle of an intense game of hide-and-seek with his cousins. "I'm going to find the best hiding spot ever," Noah called out as he darted between the trees, his worn sneakers crunching on the pine needles covering the forest floor. His cousin Pete was counting loudly near the back porch of the old farmhouse, his voice carrying through the clear mountain air. 45, 46, 47. Pete's counting faded as Noah ventured deeper into the woods, farther than he had ever gone before. The trees grew thicker here, blocking out much of the afternoon sunlight. Noah slowed his pace, looking around for the perfect hiding place. A fallen log caught his eye, its hollow interior offering what seemed like an ideal spot. Noah got down on his hands and knees and crawled toward it, pushing aside some branches. But as he got closer, he noticed something strange. The air around the log seemed to shimmer, like the heat waves that rose from the blacktop road on hot days. Noah paused, curiosity overcoming his desire to hide. He reached out his hand toward the shimmering air. A tingling sensation ran up his arm, making the hairs stand on end. The forest around him suddenly grew quiet. No birds chirping, no rustling leaves, just complete silence. "Weird," Noah whispered to himself, moving his hand closer to the strange phenomenon. The tingling intensified, and the air rippled like water. Noah had never seen anything like it before. It was better than any magic trick or science experiment from school. Just then, he heard Pete's voice in the distance, announcing he was coming to find them. Noah made a quick decision. He pushed his hand fully into the shimmering air, expecting to feel something solid on the other side. Instead, his hand disappeared from view. Noah gasped and tried to pull back, but he felt a gentle tugging, like a current pulling him forward. Before he could call out for help, the tugging became stronger. In a blink, Noah found himself drawn completely into the shimmering air, and then he was gone. Back at the farmhouse, Pete had found all the other cousins. 10-year-old Abby, Noah's little sister, was sitting on the porch steps, drinking lemonade with their grandma. "Where's Noah?" she asked when Pete and the others returned without her brother. "I thought he'd be back by now," Pete said, looking confused. "Maybe he found a really good hiding spot." Frank and Diane Campbell, Noah's parents, were chatting with relatives on the porch, unconcerned at first. Hide and seek often went on for a while during these gatherings, with the older kids sometimes hiding for an hour or more in elaborate spots. But as the afternoon sun began to dip lower, Diane felt an uneasiness growing in her chest. "Frank, have you seen Noah?" she asked her husband, trying to keep her voice casual. Frank looked up from his conversation with Noah's uncle. "No, not since lunch. Isn't he playing with the kids?" Diane walked over to the group of children now playing tag in the yard. "Has anyone seen Noah? It's almost time for dinner." The children shook their heads, and Pete spoke up. "He ran into the woods during hide-and-seek. I never found him." A flicker of worry crossed Diane's face. "Which direction did he go?" Pete pointed. "Toward the dense section of forest behind the property. That way, I think, past the big oak tree." Frank joined them, sensing his wife's concern. "I'll go check. He probably just lost track of time." Frank walked into the woods, calling Noah's name. His voice echoed through the trees, but no answer came back. He ventured deeper, following the natural path that led through the forest. Other family members joined the search, spreading out among the trees, their calls for Noah overlapping. As the sun set and darkness fell, flashlights cut through the growing shadows. What had begun as mild concern had transformed into full-blown panic. Frank's brother called the local sheriff, and soon official search parties were organized. "We'll find him," Frank assured Diane as she clutched little Abby to her side. "He probably just got turned around in the woods. You know how he likes to explore." But deep down, Frank felt something was terribly wrong. Noah knew these woods well. He had been visiting his grandparents' property since he was a baby. Getting lost seemed unlikely. The sheriff arrived with a team of deputies and search and rescue volunteers. They set up a command center on the property and began a systematic search of the surrounding forest. Volunteers combed the woods in grid patterns, calling Noah's name and looking for any signs of the boy. Days passed with no trace of Noah, no footprints leading away from the area where he was last seen. No torn clothing caught on branches, no evidence of a struggle or animal attack. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The FBI joined the investigation, interviewing family members and locals. They checked nearby roads for signs of an abduction, but the property was remote and no one had seen any unfamiliar vehicles in the area. The case made national news, Noah's smiling school picture appearing on television screens across the country. Weeks turned into months. The initial search was scaled back, but Frank and Diane refused to give up. They moved into the grandparents' property temporarily, continuing to search the woods daily, hoping for any clue to their son's whereabouts. The strain began to show on their marriage. Frank became obsessed with finding answers, staying up late reading about similar disappearances and developing theories. Diane fell into a deep depression, barely able to care for Abby, who grew quiet and withdrawn, missing her big brother. "He's out there somewhere," Frank insisted one night as he and Diane sat at the kitchen table, a map of the forest spread out before them. "We're missing something." "It's been 6 months, Frank," Diane said, her voice hollow. "If he was in those woods, we would have found something by now." The first anniversary of Noah's disappearance came and went. The Campbell family held a small gathering at the property, releasing balloons with messages for Noah. Abby, now 6 years old, watched the colorful balloons float up into the sky, wondering if her brother could see them wherever he was. As the years passed, the active investigation was officially classified as a cold case. Frank and Diane's marriage crumbled under the weight of their grief. Frank stayed in Montana, buying a small cabin near the original property, unwilling to leave the place where Noah was last seen. Diane eventually took Abby and moved back to their home in Oregon, trying to build some semblance of a normal life for her remaining child. But the mystery of what happened to Noah Campbell in those woods would haunt them all for decades to come. A question without an answer, a wound that would never fully heal. 32 years passed since Noah Campbell vanished in the Montana woods. The world moved on, but his family never truly did. Abby Campbell sat in her darkened office at the North American Radio Astronomy Observatory, her eyes fixed on the computer screen in front of her. At 36, she had grown into a respected scientist, her childhood tragedy pushing her toward a career searching the stars. The clock on her desk showed 2:15 a.m. Most of her colleagues had gone home hours ago, but Abby often worked late. The quiet of the night shift helped her think. Plus, she never slept well anyway, not since Noah disappeared. Her computer beeped, pulling her attention back to the data streaming in from the giant radio telescope array in the desert outside. For the past week, they had been receiving unusual signals from a star system nearly 60 light-years away. Most of the team thought it was just cosmic noise, maybe a pulsar or some natural phenomenon. But Abby saw something different in the pattern. She took a sip of cold coffee and ran the signal through another analysis program she had written. The screen filled with a series of peaks and valleys, mathematical sequences that seemed random at first glance. But Abby knew better. There was a pattern here. Something familiar. "What are you trying to tell me?" she whispered to the screen, rubbing her tired eyes. The pattern reminded her of something from her childhood, a game she used to play with Noah before he vanished. They had created a simple code using numbers to send secret messages to each other. Their parents thought it was cute, the secret language of siblings. On a whim, Abby opened a different program and began manually inputting the signal pattern, converting it using the old cipher she and Noah had created 3 decades ago. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, muscle memory taking over despite the years. When she finished, she stared at the result in disbelief. The screen displayed a simple message. Noah Campbell, 1662 Pinewood Lane, Montana. Abby's heart pounded in her chest. Her hands trembled as she ran the conversion again, certain she had made a mistake. But the same message appeared. "This is impossible. she whispered, pushing back from her desk. The next morning, Abby showed her findings to Dr. Reeves, the head of the research team. The older man listened patiently, then sighed. Abby, I understand why you want to see patterns. Here, given your personal history, this isn't about my brother, Abby insisted, though they both knew it was a lie. The mathematical sequence is non-random. Something or someone sent this message. Dr. Reeves looked at her with pity in his eyes. You've been working too hard. Take a few days off. Clear your head. But Abby couldn't let it go. That afternoon, she packed a bag and booked a flight to Montana. She hadn't been back in years, not since her mother's funeral 5 years earlier. Her father still lived there in a small cabin near the property where Noah had disappeared. The rental car bumped along the dirt road leading to her father's place. The landscape hadn't changed much. Still the same towering pine trees, the same mountains in the distance. Abby felt a knot forming in her stomach as memories flooded back. Frank Campbell was splitting wood outside his cabin when she pulled up. At 65, he was leaner than she remembered, his beard now completely gray. He paused mid-swing when he saw the car, then slowly lowered the axe. Abby? He called, squinting in the afternoon sun. She got out of the car, suddenly unsure of what to say. Their relationship had grown strained over the years, her father's obsession with finding Noah pushing them apart. Hi, Dad. Frank wiped his hands on his jeans and walked toward her. Everything okay? You didn't call. I need to show you something, Abby said, pulling her laptop from her bag. Inside the cabin, Abby set up her computer on the small kitchen table. The place was cluttered but clean, the walls covered with maps of the forest and old newspaper clippings about Noah's case. Some things never changed. I work at a radio astronomy lab now, Abby explained as she pulled up the signal data. We listen for signals from space. Frank nodded, though he clearly didn't understand why this mattered. Last week, we picked up something unusual from a star system about 60 light-years away. She turned the screen toward him. I ran it through, an analysis using the code Noah and I used as kids. She showed him the result. Frank stared at the screen, the color draining from his face. This is some kind of joke, he said, his voice tight. It's not. I double-checked everything. Frank pushed the laptop away and stood up, pacing the small room. What are you saying, Abby? That aliens took your brother? That he's been in space? All this time? His voice rose with each question. I don't know what I'm saying, Abby admitted. But this can't be a coincidence. Frank stopped pacing and looked at her. There's something I haven't told you. He hesitated, then continued. I've been having dreams about Noah. Abby felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of dreams? He's grown up, a man now. He's trying to tell me something about the woods, about the place he disappeared. Frank looked embarrassed. I know how it sounds. I haven't told anyone else. When did these dreams start? Abby asked. About a month ago. The timing lined up with when the signal was first detected. Abby's scientific mind struggled to make sense of it all. Coincidence or something more? I want to go back there, she said suddenly. To where it happened. Frank's expression darkened. I go there almost every day. There's nothing to find, Abby. I've looked for 32 years. But you don't have the equipment I have access to now, Abby said, determination growing inside her. Ground-penetrating radar, electromagnetic field detectors, technology that didn't exist when Noah disappeared. Frank stared at her for a long moment, hope and fear battling in his eyes. Finally, he nodded. We can go tomorrow. First light. That night, Abby barely slept. She lay on the old sofa in her father's living room, listening to the wind in the trees outside. The same trees that had somehow swallowed her brother all those years ago. In the morning, they loaded Frank's truck with Abby's equipment. As they drove toward the old family property, now owned by strangers, Abby noticed her father's hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. We'll find answers this time, she said, trying to sound confident. Frank gave her a sideways glance. Your mother always said Noah was still alive, that she could feel it. He paused. I never told her about the times I felt it too. Didn't want to feed her hope when we had nothing solid to go on. They parked at the edge of the property line and hiked into the forest, Frank leading the way through paths he clearly knew by heart. The morning air was cool and crisp, the forest peaceful. But as they approached the area where Noah was last seen, Abby's scientific equipment began to behave strangely. Her compass spun in circles, and the electromagnetic field detector beeped erratically. "Something's definitely here," she whispered, watching the readings spike. For the first time in 32 years, they had found a real clue to Noah's disappearance, and whatever it wasn't from this world. Abby and Frank spent the next 3 days in the forest, setting up equipment and taking readings. The strange energy field they discovered was perfectly circular, about 10 feet across, and centered exactly where Noah had last been seen 3 decades ago. Abby's instruments showed that the magnetic readings in this circle were unlike anything she had ever encountered. "It's like a doorway," Abby explained as she showed her father the data on her laptop. They sat at a folding table they had set up at their makeshift camp. "The energy patterns suggest some kind of portal, for lack of a better word." Frank rubbed his beard, staring at the screen. "A doorway to where?" "I don't know. Another place. Maybe even another world." Abby knew how crazy it sounded. A few days ago, she would have laughed at such an idea. But the evidence was right in front of them. Something very strange had happened in these woods. Frank looked toward the circle. They had marked it with stakes and yellow tape. From the outside, it looked like any other patch of forest floor. Pine needles, dirt, a few small plants. But when you stepped inside the circle, watches stopped working, compasses spun wildly, and people felt a strange tingling on their skin. "You think this thing took Noah?" Frank asked, his voice low. Abby nodded slowly. "It's the only explanation that fits, and now 32 years later he's trying to communicate with us from the other side." That evening, as the sun set, they noticed something new. The air within the circle began to shimmer slightly, only visible when viewed from certain angles. It reminded Abby of heat waves rising from hot pavement in summer. "It's getting stronger," she said, checking her instruments. The energy readings had doubled since morning. They kept watch through the night, taking turns sleeping in the small tent they had pitched nearby. Around 3 a.m. during Abby's watch, all of her equipment suddenly went haywire. Alarms beeped, screens flashed, and the devices monitoring the magnetic field overloaded and shut down. "Dad, wake up," she called, shaking Frank awake. They hurried to the circle, flashlights in hand. The shimmering in the air was much more visible now, like ripples in water. And there was something else, a low humming sound coming from within the circle. "What's happening?" Frank asked, his voice barely audible over the humming. Abby shook her head. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's getting stronger." They watched in amazement as the air within the circle began to glow with a faint blue light. The humming grew louder and the ground beneath their feet vibrated slightly. "Should we leave?" Frank asked, taking a step back. But Abby couldn't tear herself away. This was what they had been waiting for. Proof that something extraordinary had happened to Noah. She moved closer to the circle, holding out her hand. "Abby, don't." Frank grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "We don't know what that thing is. It's how we find Noah," she said, her eyes fixed on the glowing circle. Before Frank could respond, a loud crack echoed through the forest, like thunder directly overhead. The blue glow intensified, becoming almost painfully bright. Both Abby and Frank covered their eyes. When they looked again, the light was gone. The humming had stopped. The circle looked normal once more, but now there was something new. Footprints in the dirt leading away from the circle. Fresh footprints that hadn't been there moments before. "Someone came through," Abby whispered, her heart racing. They followed the footprints, moving slowly through the dark forest, their flashlights illuminating the path ahead. The tracks led toward the old Campbell property, now owned by a family named Porter. "We should call the police," Frank suggested as they approached the edge of the forest. Abby shook her head. "And tell them what? That we think my brother might have returned from another dimension? They'll think we're crazy." The footprints ended at the tree line. Beyond was an open field leading to the old farmhouse where the Porters now lived. Lights were on inside despite the late hour. Someone's awake, Frank noted. Maybe they saw something. They crossed the field, trying to look casual despite the circumstances. As they approached the house, the front door opened. A woman in her 50s stepped out onto the porch, looking wary. "Can I help you?" she called out. "It's a bit late for visitors." "Sorry to bother you, Mrs. Porter," Frank said. "I'm Frank Campbell. This property used to belong to my family." Recognition dawned on the woman's face. "Oh, you're the man who comes to visit the woods sometimes. My husband mentioned seeing you. This is my daughter, Abby," Frank continued. "We're actually looking for someone who might have passed this way tonight, a man." Mrs. Porter frowned. "No one's come by, but—" She hesitated. "We did see some strange lights in the sky a little while ago. My husband thought it might be the northern lights, but they were very localized, just over the forest." Abby and Frank exchanged glances. "Did you see anything else unusual?" Abby asked. Mrs. Porter shook her head. "No, just the lights. Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," Frank assured her. "Sorry to bother you so late." As they walked back toward the forest, Abby felt a growing sense of disappointment. She had been so sure they were close to finding answers. "Maybe it was nothing," Frank said, sensing her mood. "Just some kind of natural phenomenon affecting our equipment." Abby didn't respond. She knew what she had seen. The footprints were real. When they returned to their camp, everything was as they had left it. The circle showed normal readings now. No sign of the strange energy that had been present earlier. "I'm going to keep watching," Abby said, sitting down beside her equipment. "You should get some sleep." Frank looked like he wanted to argue, but nodded instead. "Wake me if anything changes." The next day brought new visitors to the forest. Several locals reported seeing the strange lights, and curious hikers had come to investigate. Abby and Frank kept to themselves, continuing their research while trying not to draw attention. By evening, most of the visitors had left. Dark clouds had gathered overhead, promising rain. Abby checked the weather radar on her phone. "Big storm coming," she told her father. "We might need to pack up soon." Frank looked at the circle, which had remained inactive all day. Maybe the weather will trigger it again. Electrical storms could affect the energy field. As if on cue, thunder rumbled in the distance. The air felt charged, heavy with the coming rain. Abby's equipment began picking up increased readings from the circle. "It's happening again," she said, excitement building in her voice. The first drops of rain fell through the trees as the air within the circle began to shimmer once more. The blue glow returned, stronger than before. Thunder crashed directly overhead, and lightning split the sky. "Get back!" Frank shouted as a bolt of lightning struck a tree near their camp. They scrambled for cover as more lightning flashed around them. The storm had intensified with unnatural speed, centering directly over the glowing circle. Wind whipped through. The trees and rain poured down in sheets. Through the chaos, Abby kept her eyes on the circle. The blue light had formed a column now, reaching up into the stormy sky. The humming sound had returned, growing louder with each passing second. Then, in a final blinding flash, the column of light collapsed in on itself. The storm immediately began to subside, the wind dying down, the lightning moving away. Abby wiped rain from her eyes, blinking to clear her vision. And that's when she saw him, a figure standing in the center of the circle, a man in strange form-fitting clothing, looking disoriented, but very much alive. Frank saw him too. They both stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight before them. The man looked around, his gaze finally settling on Abby and Frank. Recognition flickered across his face. He took a shaky step toward them, then another. "Abby?" he called, his voice uncertain. "Dad?" Abby felt her knees go weak. After 32 years, her brother had returned. Time seemed to stand still as Noah took another step toward them. He looked to be in his early 40s, though he should have been nearly 50 by Earth's timeline. His face was older, but unmistakably Noah's. The same eyes, the same nose, just matured. He wore what appeared to be a skin-tight silver suit with strange symbols etched across the chest. "Is it really you?" Frank whispered, his voice breaking. Noah nodded slowly. "It's me, Dad." Abby couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her brother, missing for 32 years, was standing right in front of her. Part of her wanted to run to him, throw her arms around him. Another part was frozen in disbelief. "You're all wet," Noah said, looking at their rain-soaked clothes with a hint of his old smile. Some things never change about Earth weather. That broke the spell. Abby rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her brother. He felt solid, real, his body warm against hers despite the cool night air. Frank joined them, his arms encircling them both as tears streamed down his weathered face. "We need to get you home," Frank said when they finally broke apart, "out of these woods." They gathered their essential equipment, leaving the rest for later. Noah moved with a strange grace, his steps light as if he wasn't quite used to Earth's gravity. He looked around the forest with wonder, touching tree trunks and leaves as they walked. "It's just as I remember," he said softly, though everything seems smaller now. Back at Frank's cabin, they sat around the kitchen table. Frank made coffee while Abby found some of his old clothes for Noah to wear. The silver suit Noah had been wearing was folded neatly on a chair, its material unlike anything Abby had ever seen, somehow both solid and fluid at the same time. "You have so many questions," Noah said as Abby set a mug of coffee in front of him. "I can see them in your eyes." 32 years worth, Abby replied, sitting across from him. "Where were you? What happened to you?" Noah took a deep breath, wrapping his hands around the mug. "I was taken. Not against my will exactly, I was curious. Too curious." He smiled faintly. "Remember how Mom always said my curiosity would get me into trouble?" Frank nodded, his eyes never leaving his son's face. "That day, during hide-and-seek, I found something in the woods. A doorway, though I didn't know what it was then. Just a strange shimmering in the air." Noah paused, collecting his thoughts. "I reached out to touch it and it pulled me through. On the other side was another world, another reality." "Who took you?" Abby asked. "They call themselves the Archivists. They're not like us. Not human, but not monsters either." Noah looked down at his coffee. "They collect things. Knowledge, artifacts, specimens from thousands of worlds across the galaxy. They've been observing Earth for centuries, mostly from a distance. And they just took you? A child?" Frank's voice held a hint of anger. Noah shook his head. "It wasn't like that. They were curious about me because I could see their doorway. Most humans can't. They have a special interest in beings who can perceive things outside normal reality. They call it the sight." "So they kept you as a specimen?" Abby asked, trying to understand. "At first, yes. They studied me, learned from me. But over time, our relationship changed. I learned their language, their technology. They began to respect what I could offer them. A human perspective." Noah took a sip of coffee, closing his eyes briefly as he savored the familiar taste. "I became something of a diplomat between them and other collected species." "Did they hurt you?" Frank asked, his hands clenched on the table. "No, never. They treated me well, but I missed home. Missed you." Noah looked between Abby and Frank. "Time works differently there. For me, only about 15 years have passed, not 32. Something about the way they travel between stars bends time." Abby's scientific mind raced with questions. "You're saying they have faster-than-light travel?" Noah smiled at her. "They have technologies we can't even begin to comprehend. Ways of moving through space that don't follow our understanding of physics. Why didn't they bring you back sooner?" Frank asked, the question he'd been holding back. Noah's expression grew serious. "They couldn't. The doorways, the portals they use, only align with Earth occasionally. They're like natural phenomena that the archivists have learned to predict and use. This alignment was the first opportunity in what you would call decades." "The signal," Abby said suddenly. The one I detected at the observatory. That was you? Noah nodded. I helped the archivist send it. We knew it would reach Earth around the time the portal would open again. I hoped someone might recognize the code we used as kids. He smiled at her. You were always the smart one. But why come back now? After all this time? Frank asked. The smile faded from Noah's face. Because I have to warn you. All of you. Earth is in danger. A heavy silence fell over the room. Abby and Frank exchanged worried glances. What kind of danger? Abby finally asked. The archivists aren't the only advanced species out there, Noah explained. There's another race they call the Harvesters. They move from planet to planet, taking what they need, resources, technology, sometimes even people, and leaving nothing behind. Like locusts, Frank murmured. Exactly. The archivists detected their ships changing course recently, heading toward our solar system. Noah looked between them, his expression grave. They're coming to Earth and we're not ready for them. When? Abby asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 3 years, maybe 4. Time enough to prepare if we start. Now. Noah straightened in his chair. That's why the archivists let me come back. They've grown fond of humans through their study of me. They want to help us. Help us how? Frank asked skeptically. Noah stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. I didn't just come back with a warning. I came back with knowledge, technology, ways to defend ourselves. He turned back to face them. The archivists gave me everything I need to help Earth prepare. Abby tried to process what she was hearing. Alien invaders, advanced technology. It sounded like science fiction, yet her brother stood before her, living proof that the impossible was real. We need to tell someone, she said. The government, scientists, someone who can help us spread the word and start preparing. Noah nodded. Yes, but carefully. The wrong approach could cause panic or disbelief. We need proof. The silver suit, Frank suggested. Your portal. Would those be enough? Maybe, but we need more. Noah looked thoughtful. Abby, your position at the observatory might help. Scientists might listen to one of their own. Abby nodded, already thinking of colleagues who might believe her. Dr. Reeves would think I'm crazy, but there are others who might listen. Tomorrow we'll start making calls, Frank said, determination in his voice. But tonight, he placed a hand on Noah's shoulder. Tonight you're home, that's all that matters right now. Noah smiled, tears forming in his eyes. I've dreamed of this moment for so long, being home. He looked around the simple cabin. It's not exactly how I pictured it. Your mother, Frank began, then stopped, emotion choking his words. She never gave up hope. She always believed you were alive somewhere. I wish I could have seen her again, Noah said softly. Abby reached across the table and took his hand. She knew, Noah. Somehow she knew you were okay. Outside, the storm had passed. Through the window, stars shone in the clear night sky. Somewhere, out there were the archivists who had taken Noah, and beyond them the approaching threat. But for now, in this moment, the Campbell family was whole again, and tomorrow they would begin the work of saving their world. The next morning, Abby called her boss at the observatory asking for an emergency meeting. She was careful not to mention anything about Noah or aliens over the phone. Some things needed to be explained in person. We need proof they'll believe, Noah said as they drove to the meeting in Abby's rental car. He sat in the back seat watching the landscape pass by with fascination. Most people will think I'm crazy, or that you two are being tricked. Frank nodded from the passenger seat. What can you show them that they can't explain away? Noah reached into a small pouch he had brought from his silver suit. He pulled out what looked like a smooth black stone, about the size of a golf ball. This should help. At the observatory, Abby led them to a conference room where 3 of her colleagues waited. Dr. Reeves was there, along with Dr. Patel, an astrophysicist, and Dr. Walker, a senior researcher specializing in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. "This better be good, Abby," Dr. Reeves said, checking his watch. "You were very mysterious on the phone." Abby took a deep breath. "I'd like to introduce you to my brother, Noah Campbell." The scientist looked at Noah with mild interest, unaware of the significance. "My brother disappeared 32 years ago," Abby continued, "until yesterday when he returned, through a portal in the woods where he first vanished." The room fell silent. Dr. Reeves frowned, clearly concerned about Abby's mental state. "I know how this sounds," Noah said calmly, "but I can prove I'm not lying." He placed the black stone on the conference table. "This is Archivist technology, a data storage device containing information about their species and the harvesters." "Doctor." Walker leaned forward, scientific curiosity overcoming his skepticism. "May I?" he asked, reaching for the stone. Noah nodded. "Just touch it with both hands and think about what you want to know." Dr. Walker picked up the stone, holding it between his palms. His expression changed from doubt to amazement in seconds. "Oh my God," he whispered, his eyes widening. "I can see them. I can see everything." The stone was projecting images directly into his mind, visions of the archivists, their world, their technology. He placed it back on the table with shaking hands. "It's some kind of neural interface," he said, "like nothing I've ever seen before." One by one, the other scientists tried the stone. Each came away convinced that what they had experienced was real. No technology on Earth could create such detailed and responsive mental imagery. "This changes everything we know about physics, biology, astronomy," Dr. Patel said, her voice filled with excitement. "The implications are enormous." "We don't have time to study this academically," Noah explained. "The harvesters are coming. We need to prepare Earth's defenses." Over the next few hours, Noah shared everything he knew about the alien threat. The scientists asked questions, took notes, and occasionally shook their heads in disbelief despite the evidence in front of them. "We need to take this to the government," Dr. Reeves finally said. "Military, NASA, international bodies. This is bigger than our observatory." Within days, Noah was meeting with top military officials and government scientists. The Black Stone convinced even the most skeptical among them. Soon, he was working with an international team of experts, sharing the technology and knowledge the archivists had given him. Abby joined the effort, her background in radio astronomy proving valuable as they established new monitoring systems to track the approaching harvester ships. Frank helped where he could, mostly by supporting Noah and Abby, making sure they ate and slept during the long days of work. 3 months after Noah's return, the first prototype defense system was ready for testing. Based on Archivist designs, it used Earth's existing satellite network, but modified them with new technology that could detect and potentially disrupt harvester ships. "Will it be enough?" Abby asked Noah as they watched the first test from a control room in Nevada. Noah looked uncertain. "The archivists gave us their best technology, but the harvesters are powerful. We'll need more than just defensive systems." "Like what?" "Unity," Noah said simply. "Earth needs to work together. No more fighting among ourselves." That proved to be the hardest challenge. Even in the face of an alien threat, nations struggled to cooperate fully. Old rivalries and suspicions lingered. But Noah's presence, and the undeniable evidence he brought, slowly broke down these barriers. 1 year after his return, Noah addressed the United Nations General Assembly. The speech was broadcast around the world. He told his story and warned of the coming danger. He spoke not as a victim or a prophet, but as a bridge between worlds. "The harvesters see Earth as just another resource to consume," he explained to the gathered leaders. "But the archivists see something else in humanity, something worth preserving. They see our creativity, our resilience, our capacity for growth. That's why they sent me back, not just with technology, but with hope." The speech changed the conversation. Nations began pooling resources and knowledge. A global defense initiative was formed, with Noah and Abby among its key leaders. New technologies developed rapidly as scientists applied the principles Noah had brought from the archivists. 2 years after Noah's return, the first true spacecraft built with the new technology launched from Kennedy Space Center. Unlike previous human vessels, this ship could travel at speeds approaching that of light, using principles that bent space rather than pushing through it. Abby watched the launch from the control room, Frank by her side. Noah was on board the ship, leading a mission to deploy early warning beacons throughout the solar system. "I never thought I'd see my son go back to space," Frank said quietly as the ship disappeared from view. "At least this time we know where he's going and when he'll be back." Abby squeezed her father's hand. "He came back once. He'll come back again." The mission was successful. By the end of the 3rd year, Earth had a network of detection systems. Throughout the solar system, a growing fleet of defense vessels and weapons capable of repelling the harvester ships. More importantly, the people of Earth had united in a way never seen before, setting aside old conflicts in the face of a common threat. On the eve of the predicted harvester arrival, Noah stood on the observation deck of the Global Defense Command Center, looking up at the stars. Abby joined him, following his gaze to the night sky. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Being out there with the archivists?" Noah considered the question. "Sometimes. They showed me wonders I can't even describe, but Earth is my home, it always was. Are we ready?" Abby asked the question that had been on everyone's mind. "As ready as we can be," Noah replied. "The archivists believe in us. They've seen thousands of civilizations across the galaxy, and they chose to help us. That means something." A young officer approached them, saluting Noah. "Sir, we've detected the first harvester ships entering the outer solar system. They'll be within range of our defenses in 48 hours. Noah nodded. "Alert all stations. It's time." As the officer hurried away, Noah turned back to Abby. "Remember when we were kids playing hide and seek? I was always hiding and you were always finding me." Abby smiled at the memory. "And now humanity is done hiding," Noah said, determination in his voice. "It's time for us to be found, to take our place among the stars, not as victims or specimens, but as equals." Together, they walked back into the command center, ready to face whatever came next. The game of hide and seek that began 36 years ago in the Montana woods was finally over. Noah had been found, and now humanity would stand its ground.